Well, hi there, Sax Gourmet fans. It's Steve Goodson, and I am speaking to you once again from our ultra top secret command and control bunker located here at Sax Gourmet World Headquarters at the historic Garden District of Old New Orleans. If you don't remember who I am, you just ask your mama. You can bet your mama remembers who I am. And, we have these seminars every couple of weeks, every Tuesday, every other Tuesday. And tonight I want to talk to you about something that's very important if you're going to actually be successful at making a living doing this music business. And that is, once you get booked into a club, and we're only talking about clubs tonight, then you go and you play your gig, and then you try to get another date, and they put you off. Why would that be? Well, I'm 68 years old, and I've started taking money for playing when I was barely 14, and I've seen the same mistakes made over and over again by bands. It prevents them from getting those follow-up dates, and we're going to try to talk about some of them. And if you have questions or comments, I welcome them. They appear right here on my screen, and we'll try to address them. Now, before we get very far into this, we're going to assume a couple of things. Thing number one is that you and your band have the requisite musical skills. That means you can play. And I have seen from time to time people get out there and try to play a gig, and they didn't quite have their chops together, and maybe they need to spend a little more time practicing. Eric Satterley, now there is a real saint of a music store owner, highly skilled technician, and my buddy. Don't any of you ever say anything bad about Eric Satterley, you're going to have to answer to me. But listen, let's talk about this. Now, if you've got the requisite musical skills, the next thing you have to do is making sure that your set list is consistent with what the customers of that club expect. In other words, if it's a goth hard rock club, don't go in there playing straight ahead jazz or bebop, or don't play bluegrass. If it's a jazz club, come on, common. If you don't know what they're used to hearing at that club, you got no business playing there, and you can trust me on that. Now, make sure that you understand that if your band has a following, that club is also somewhere where they're going to feel comfortable going. In other words, if you're playing a biker bar, don't bring a bunch of those, little sweethearts that, you know what I'm talking about. All right, so let's talk about this thing in some semblance of organized order. So be sure, first and foremost, that you have a contract with your writer with the club. Now, people say, oh, I just work on a handshake. Well, then you riding for a fall, good buddy, because you certainly don't want to misunderstand between you and the club owner the financial terms. You don't want to misunderstand the hours of performance and the terms of performance. But here are some other things that are very, very important for you to figure out. Is the club going to provide the backline, drum kit, such as that? Some do, some don't. Is the club going to provide the sound system? Some do, some don't. If they're providing a sound system, are they going to provide somebody to run it that's familiar with that sound system? Some do and some don't. And also, how about lights? Now, a good friend of mine recently sent me a little video of her band playing a gig, and hell, they were playing in the dark. The club didn't have any lights on what passed for a stage area, and they didn't bring any with them. Are you telling me that you couldn't have figured that out ahead of time? Nobody wants to be entertained in the dark. I mean, the audience might be in the dark, but they want to be able to see the musicians. Contrary to what you may have been told at these hoity-toity music skills, a lot of what we do is a visual art. Jane Lindsay Thomas. Glad to have you with us, Jane. So understand that no matter what musical style you're playing, they're going to look at you. And you need to be sure that they can see you. And that means somebody got to run the lights. Okay, so if you got all that straightened out, here's something else that's so crucial, is you got to stipulate what the electrical requirements are. You know, don't get to a club and find out there's one 110 volt outlet at the back of the stage. You ain't gonna be able to plug everything into that. If you're going to need to wire directly in to their electrical service entrance, which I know a lot of the bands that I've appeared with over the years do, they need to know that. Make sure they're cool with that. Not everybody wants some roadie back there messing around with the power box. Another thing that's so very important is to be sure that they have proper staging for you. Do they have a drum riser? Why do you need a drum riser? Well, the reason you need a drum riser is because the drummer's sitting down. Everybody else is standing up. And so, get the drummer's face at least up equal with yours. Come on, that's just common sense. And you can get a portable drum riser. They're not expensive, and it'll serve you well in just about any venue that you're playing. All right, now, the topic of tonight's talk is about they booked us once, but they never called us back. Let me ask you something. And really, this gets down to just the basics of salesmanship. Why the hell are you expecting them to call you? Why don't you call them? Why don't you book a follow-up date, as the crew is packing up the gear to leave after your successful engagement? That's the time. Strike while the iron is hot. But, if you go, remember that these clubs, they got all the bands in town calling them all the time wanting to play. So you have to show them that you're better than all those other bands, you draw better, and you sell more liquor. Did you hear me? Because, see, your job is not to further your own musical career. That ain't your job. If you're playing in a nightclub, your job is to sell whiskey. You're not there for any other reason. And don't get delusional on me and think that you are there for some other reason, because you're not. Your job is to sell whiskey. And when that club owner at the end of the night sees an increase in his register totals over the band they had the last weekend, then you've done your job right. Okay, so we're going to make sure ahead of time, way ahead of time, we're going to have the financial terms worked out. We're going to have the hours of performance worked out. We're going to have the staging and electrical requirements worked out. And something else, virtually every club I know of that has live entertainment is also collecting a cover charge. And there's nothing wrong with that. Now, don't you be a knucklehead and just go in there playing for the door unless there's some guarantee. Well, suit yourself. You're allegedly an adult and know what to do about that. But I've seen this happen many times where band will roll up and get all set up and it's almost time for the show and they're going to start admitting people and suddenly, where's your doorman? Oh, we didn't bring a doorman. Hadn't you got a doorman? No, I ain't got a doorman. This got to be worked out in advance, folks. So get that worked out as to who's going to do what. Now, another thing you got to do substantially in advance is you got to figure out the promotion. Now, I'm going to assume that your band has a following in the community where you're about to appear. Well, you got to be sure that the community that follows your band knows where you're going to be playing. And how do you do that? Well, don't count on just social media. I know that most people waste a large part of their life on Facebook. I know I certainly do. But, don't count on just social media to do all that for you. And also, I know back in the old Corps, we used to go around, say if we're playing Friday and Saturday, we'd go around on Wednesday and we would put flyers up on utility poles and put them under the windshield wipers of cars and all that. I always thought that was kind of a waste of time, but anyway, one thing that's not a waste of time, and it's not hard to do, is one, if you have a band, then you need to be publishing a at least monthly newsletter so they know where you're going to appear. Give them some news about the band or something. Just make something up if you have, if you have to. So, but anyway, you need to have a newsletter, and then you need to have a mailing list that's going to remind them that, hey, Friday and Saturday of this week, we're playing down at Charlie Brown's Lounge. And so you guys come down there and see us. Now, I will assume that if you've been halfway successful in the music business, that you've got some contacts in the local media. Now, that means that if your city still has a viable print newspaper, many of them don't anymore, but if they do, they've got an entertainment editor who can, write up something about you going to be appearing down at Charlie Brown's Lounge. I know here in New Orleans, we have several different little magazines that they give away all over town. And understand that those magazines are all going to talk about me, and Steve Goodson and the Low Budget Horns are going to be appearing at Charlie Brown's Lounge Friday night. Show starts at 10 or whatever. And understand this, people are often, for some reason, reluctant to contact the media and ask the media to promote their gig and all that. Why do you care? Nobody's going to hurt you. The worst that happens, they said no, and that's the equivalent of them not even knowing about you. So if you want to be booked again and again, you have to show that club owner that you can promote the gig on your own. Now, this is not to say that the club owner shouldn't be involved in promotion themselves. And I assure you that any club owner that's worth their salt also has contacts in the media, and let them do their part. Now, something else we have here in New Orleans, and I'll never forget when I was playing in Johnny Angel's band, and Johnny liked to have the band appear on the morning, before work TV show, which means that we'd have to play at like 6 in the morning. Come on, Johnny. Johnny was a master promoter, but you try to drag those guys out at 6, 7 in the morning, it's hard. But they have a big audience, and your fans can see that and plan to come see you that night. Johnny knew what was going on. So anyway, here's something to suggest to the club owner and get it in your contract. Let's have, for example, we're going to be playing, Steve Goodson and the Low Budget Horns are going to be appearing down at Charlie Brown's Lounge tonight. Show starts at 10, and all ladies who show up wearing a red dress gonna get admitted free. Oh, red dress night or something, be creative. And that's always a good thing to do. You and the club owner put your heads together and come up with something out of the ordinary. So anyway, promotion is a must, and promotion on the part of the band and the venue. You got to coordinate it. You got to work hand in hand, and also the band and the venue have to be on the same page with regard to, just the necessities, time, financial terms and all that. But if you want to get booked again, make sure that all of those bases are absolutely covered. And speaking of bases being covered, it's never too late to like this presentation or, share it with your friends and other groups that you might be a member of. All right, it's gig day. Let's talk about what happens. Well, we got to load in. Now, rule number one of loading in is, yea, verily I say unto thee, thou shalt not ever interfere with paying customers, which means if your club has a regular happy hour crowd, they open at 4 or 5 in the afternoon, something like that, don't you schedule your load in for them. By the time their happy hour crowd shows up, then you have to be fully loaded in and sound checked. You do not want to interfere with the paying customers if you want to be booked again. Trust me on that. Now, another thing, I know most of the groups that I played in, if we were providing our own sound and light, is we have this thing called a pink noise generator. And if you don't know what that is, you need to go out and buy one. Because it sets the EQ of your PA to perfection. But it makes literally very obnoxious noise. It's kind of like the static on your radio or your TV set. And so, I'm glad to have Pete here. But anyway, the thing is, if you're going to use pink noise generator, you do it when isn't anybody else around except the employees of that club if you want to be asked again. Now, here's another thing that will piss off a club owner about as quick as anything I know. You pull up in your bus and all that, and, the crew unloads your rig and brings it in, and then you leave your bus parked right in front of the front door of the club. And I have yet to find a club owner who actually like that. They want you to get the bus out of the way. So don't block the door. Make it easy for those potential paying customers to see what's going on, see the door, and to come in. Now, back to sound check. After you got your rig all loaded in and all that, you got to remember a couple of things about sound check. It's just that. You want to make sure that all the microphones are working and all that good stuff. And it is not a rehearsal. Did you hear me? It's not a rehearsal. And it is also not ever to be done in front of paying customers. Get it done and get it over with. Now, by the time you are through with the sound check, and if there's an opening act, they're through with their sound check, then it's time to go out and everybody in the band meet the wait staff and meet the bartenders. Those people are your best ambassadors as far as making sure the crowd is happy and that the club owner has you back. If the wait staff and the barkeeps are not happy, you are not going to get asked back. And here's something to do, and I want you just to think about the logistics of this. All right, something we always do as you come to see Steve Goodson and the Low Budget Horns is we're going to have a merch table set up, and we're going to try to sell you some CDs and some cozies, we're going to say some T-shirts. Yeah, okay. Now, you guys know and I know what those T-shirts actually cost, which isn't a lot. And you need to make sure that every one of the waitresses gets a T-shirt to wear during your appearance. And every one of the bartenders gets a T-shirt. Now, I know, let's see, what's the name of that company that we buy T-shirts from? I don't remember, but they sure are good. And we buy several hundred shirts at a time. And I think high quality Hanes T-shirts end up costing us, I don't know, $12 a half. And my brother Dave, I hope that driveway work you haven't done at your palatial estate is doing well. So anyway, make sure that the wait staff and the bartender are all wearing a T-shirt that says Steve Goodson and the Low Budget Horns, or whatever your band has, because that is going to get the attention of everybody that comes to see you. Now, also another thing that I am adamant about is what the band, the members of the band actually wear themselves. Don't look, when you walk into that bar and heading up to the stage, you should never, ever be mistaken for a member of the audience. Don't dress like they do. Dress like something that, says what you are. Remember that it's a visual art form. And if you want to be booked again, you're going to have to do that. You're going to have to do that. So be sure everybody in the band, you don't have to all dress alike, but be sure that you look like what you are. I mean, me, I show up and I look like an aging rock star or something like that, I guess. Okay, so we got all that figured out. Now we want to make sure that we are straight before we start admitting the public and all that on another thing that I see bands abuse all the time. And believe me, this will piss off the club owner and you will not get asked back for a return engagement. And that's the guest list. Bands abuse this all the time. And, if the club has a seating capacity of 100 people, you can't put 20 people on the guest list for free. Even if they're your best buddies and all that. I used to, back in the old Corps when I was a student at Auburn, I had this girlfriend. She was good looking too. But, everywhere I'd be playing, she'd want to bring all her little buddies, and they'd have a little hen party down there where I was playing. And so, okay, how many people go on the list tonight? 6. And that's just for me. The bass player's going to have a couple, and the drummer going to have a couple, etc. You know what I'm talking about? And before long, it's not a good idea. So, seriously, don't do that. Now, it's good to have a few people in there that are, always your regular supporters and all that. It's also a good idea. I tell you, and I tell this story often because it's one of the smartest things I've ever heard. I used to have the house band at this bar in Birmingham, Alabama called the Rock Connection. And David, who was the owner of the club, had the smartest idea I ever saw. Doc, oh man, Doc, you're my hero. You're the greatest Barry player in the world. But David went down to the local gentlemen's clubs and he passed out laminated cards to all the ladies who appeared at those gentlemen's clubs, good for unlimited free admissions. So you go down to play the gig and who's in there? The place is full of good-looking strippers. And boy, it would bring the men in and they'd buy those girls drinks and all that. It was one of the smartest things I ever saw. And until your band gets as famous as the legendary Tower of Power or the Strokeland band, then, you're going to have to do what you can to bring the crowd in if you want to be asked back for another gig. So be sure that you plan this special promotion, all that, but don't abuse the guest list. Now, if you're going to provide or arrange for the opening act for you, then what you want to do is this. You want to fully accept responsibility for what they do and say and how they look and all that, because you're the one that brought them to the dance. So, You know, if it's your brother-in-law's band and they're really not too good, and don't do that. Don't compromise yourself. Um, be sure to understand that the opening act also is going to reflect on you. So do a good job and make sure that it's such a deal that you're going to sound great after the opening act. I remember I was playing a series of shows with some people back in the 70s, and whoever the opening act was just great, and the main act, which was who I was playing with, didn't want to follow them. Ooh, bad situation. Uh, but anyway, you're responsible. Now, for every venue, once again, I want to remind you, if you want to be asked back, you want to have your set list tailored to the crowd that's there. Unless you got your own hits, like Tower of Power, then you need to be playing what those people expect to hear and what they like. When I played in Vince Vance's band, Vince used to always say, if you look out there in the audience and they're not singing along with you, you just played the wrong tune. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. Um, they're not there, the people in the audience not there to further your musical career. You're there to entertain them, to sell whiskey, so the club owner hires you again and you get paid again. Okay, now, uh, be sure that your set list is worked out in advance and consistent with the crowd that's going to be at that venue. And also understand that per your contract, you're firm on what the start time is, and you abide by that. If it says you're going to start at the crack of 10 p.m., then damn it, start at the crack of 10 p.m. That's very important. Punctuality is a great virtue. Now, breaks. If you're going to do breaks, and then come back and do a second show, a second set, don't abuse that. Oh, please don't abuse that. Don't take a break longer than had been previously agreed to. And if at all possible, make sure you control the recorded music that's played during the break, so it maintains the kind of feel that you want the room. Now, another thing about the opening act, I got to tell you this story. I was doing a show one time at a college bar, and there was this opening act, and those guys got on, and we were back in the green room waiting to go on at 11 o'clock. I think they were to go on at 10, and we were to go on at 11, and they were to knock off at 10 to 11 or something like that. Well, anyway, at 11:15, the opening act was still on because they were having a big time because all those folks who had paid to come see us, they thought it'd come to see them. And man, those guys go on. And finally, I tell you what it took to get those guys off the damn stage is we had somebody go and pull the switch on the electrical power to the stage because I think those guys would still be there tonight. Now, during intermissions, listen, if at all possible, go out and mingle with the crowd. Get to know some of those people, shake hands, let them buy you a drink. They don't know that you probably get to drink for free or such as that. But always, always be nice. Always be nice because those people paid to come and see you perform. That's very, very important. Now, here's another couple of rules that I have, and violating these rules, many times I've seen it get bands not be asked back. About people that sit in, I don't allow it. Okay, I don't allow it at all. Now, I've been to see Tower Power, and they've had former members of the band who were in the audience come up and sit in. If Lenny Pickett was there, or Norbert Stanchel, or somebody else. Okay, I'm down with that. But those are famous people. But if it's just some guy that or even worse, somebody you don't know, and you don't know whether they can pay or not, they hadn't rehearsed with you, they don't know your show, They don't know your material, and the worst thing I ever see is somebody standing up in front of the band looking up at you on the stage, and they've got a harmonica in their hands. Oh my God, they got a harmonica and they claim to be a harmonica player. And oh, don't let them up there. Don't. If they want to play, tell them to book their own damn gigs. And that's the truth. Because they're not really adding to your show. The worst thing that can happen is them get in there and just be awful and destroy your show. You don't get hired again. And I've seen this happen more than once. Now, if you want to get hired again, and this is something that so many bands fail to do, is you got to be sure and get the crowd involved. Theoretically, we got a full house out there in front of us, and they're all having a great time. Something that I always like to do, well, as you know, I kind of like women, and, it brings some pretty girls up there and introduce them and, talk to them a little bit, and interact with the pretty girls. Nothing wrong with that. But here's another something that, back when I was playing with Vince Vance and the Valiants, we did, Vince Vance and the Valiants, to a large degree, was a very, very slick oldies act, and we did an Elvis medley. Well, if you're going to have an Elvis medley, what do? Well, suddenly, at the first chord of Jailhouse Rock, down, 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 suddenly the roadies appear in front of the stage, and they have a bag, and in front of the bag, in that bag is a bunch of stick-on sideburns. Now listen, those are real sideburns there, but if you didn't come so equipped, then what you need to do is have something that stick on to people, and they go all through the crowd just sticking sideburns on people. Oh man, they went nuts. And we got them involved and all that, and it was a good thing. So, have some contest, name some trivial point or something. Always got to have a winner, and be sure that you have a prize. Now, the prize can be, and work this out with the club owner ahead of time. We give them a $20 bar tab for the winner, or give them a Steve Goodson a low budget horns t-shirt. I don't know, but get people involved, because something that people that are involved with the show will buy more liquor, and the club owner will have you back. If your bar ring isn't such that the club owner unhappy, then he ain't gonna have you back. So do that. Now, be sure and get the wait staff involved. If your crew doesn't want to go out and stick sideburns on people, or recognize the girls that wore a short red dress or whatever, then find something else. Remember, they're all wearing your t-shirts promoting your band, so it's an experience between you and that club. Then for goodness sakes, be sure that the wait staff is involved and all that. Now, I'm not saying that you take the wait staff and every one of them takes a beer pitcher and goes around and collects tips and all that, although I have seen that done very effectively. But, keep the wait staff involved. And remember, they get to keep t-shirts. They got something for nothing. And most bands weren't respectful to the wait staff. Be sure and introduce them from the stage. And they're going to generate enthusiasm. Enthusiasm means repeat bookings for you. Now, it's the end of the show. You've done your encores and all that. I know one of the things when I was working for Vince Vance, that Vince, who's a great showman, master entertainer, but Vince always made sure the whole band was down in front of the stage after the show, or over by the merch table, and to autograph CDs. And hell, I autographed 1 million Vince Vance CDs, and I didn't play on one of them. But be available. Thank people for coming. Be gracious to them, and sign them up while they're there for your mailing list. And tell them you look forward to coming back and playing at Charlie Brown's Lounge again, or whatever. So all of these things, if you'll do these things, you get asked back. If you don't, and you don't put on a show with enthusiasm and involve everybody that's there, both the employees, the wait staff, the barkeeps, and all that, and the audience, you're not going to get asked back. So, at any rate, those are my tips for repeated performances. If you have any questions or want to discuss it any further, I'm not hard to find. We got plenty of discussion groups here on Facebook, and we'd be glad to hear. I would like to thank each and every one of you for tuning in. And so, until we meet again, my friends, this is Steve Goodson reminding you to practice long tones every day. Remember to keep your reed wet, and always, always, always play Sax Gourmet. Why? Because Sax Gourmet simply plays best. All right, until 2 weeks from now, we'll see you. Goodbye for now.